Hello and welcome back. On this windy Wisconsin day, we're going to be seeing if the MPX by Sig Sauer, being worth twice as much as a Stribog SP9A1 by Grand Power, is actually twice the gun of the Stribog. Stay tuned. We're going to go over both of these and a couple other handguns that I have to compare them to. Coming up next. First up, I'm going to be using the MPX 9mm, shooting the 124 grain NATO rounds by Winchester. Distance is 25 yards. Last round held open. The MPX functioned quite well on that round. I have had some issues with this pistol when it comes to firing, but so far today it's been really good. Next up, I have my Stribog SP9A1. This is as well loaded up with 124 grain NATO Winchester rounds, shooting at a distance of 25 yards. This handgun as well has the last round bolt open. And I have had no issues with this aside from the early magazines. The early magazines were straight and then they came out later with curved ones. If you stick with the curved magazines and the 9mm Stribogs, you should be okay. I have here is a Masterpiece Arms Defender. It's an MPA 30 SST. This is their side cocking model, and on it, I don't know what's inside the sight, but I have a true glow sight on it. A cheap sight just looks good on the Max style weapons. These, of course, do not have a last round bolt hold open. They do have the magazine release located on the bottom of it. And there is one thing to keep into consideration, that these have a massive, massive grip on them. They are quite a handful when you're shooting. Not bad. It would be nice to have some sort of a brace on it or do the paperwork and have it SBR'd. So, last up, I have a Springfield Armory XD Mod 2 in the 4-inch 9mm. This, of course, has a last round slide lock, which does work when you're not having your slide ride it. I did remember to pull my slide off, my thumb I should say, off the slide release, so it did lock it open. The internet really hates these handguns for some reason, and I have no idea why. I've got the 3-inch, the 4-inch, and the 5-inch in both the 45 and the 9mm in them, and I have never had an issue with any of these handguns. Again, this is an XD9 Mod 2 in a 4-inch. 5 rounds, MPA 30, 9mm. Five rounds clear, no last round bolt hold open. 5 rounds, Stribog SP9A1. And the Stribog as well has a last round bolt hold open. Now what I have been shooting is a 124 grain 9mm NATO by Winchester. It is a 1200 feet per second round for the 9mm. Let's go down to the target and see how each one of those handguns grouped. Five rounds, MPX. Five rounds, and as you can see, the MPX has a bolt hold open. Okay, the rounds were fired at a 50-yard bench, not using any kind of a front rest. The first 5 rounds here, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I am not sure where the 5th one went. These first 5 rounds, center mass, they were fired by the MPA 90. That is a side cocker. These 5 down here were fired with the MPX, and the 5 rounds up here were fired with the Stribog SP9A1. I'd say probably between the MPX and the Stribog, they are definitely a little bit tighter group. Biggest problem is you're going to have with that MPA, until I have some kind of an arm brace put on it, you're going to have such a more radical spread, dealing with no way to actually stabilize it. So as you can see, definitely the Stribog and the SP9A1, well, the SP9A1 and the MPX definitely won this round. Today, all shooting was done with NATO, 9mm NATO Winchester white box ammunition. I like using the 9mm NATO over the 9mm Luger because the NATO is a little bit higher pressure, and it seems like it cycles a lot of these different style of 9mm large frame handguns and handguns in general just a little bit better. But enough about the ammo. Let's go on to the first handgun we shot today. This is the MPX by Sig Sauer. This is a piston operated handgun firing a 9mm. That makes it a lot softer shooting than a lot of the other large frame handguns I have. Now this is a more of an ambidextrous style gun. Starting off in the front, it's got a regular birdcage style flash hider. It's got a flip up front sight, which when I bought this, it's got the Keymod handguard on it. Now everything has been switched over to M-LOK. Coming back from there, we have a magazine release. Actually, that's the magazine release. This is a bolt release. Going back from there, we have an ambidextrous safety, so it'll have a safety selector on both sides. On this side, it's got a little bit smaller one. On the back here, I have a SB Tactical 3-position arm brace. That comes in handy for doing any supported shooting off your cheek. Now this is the rear sight that would have came with the handgun as well. For an optic, I have a EOTech, I believe it's a 552. It uses the AA batteries and has night vision compatibility. Now coming around to the other side, we have a Surefire flashlight. I've got just a basic Surefire flashlight set up here. I believe it's the G2 model. and it's just a regular pressure pad I have installed, and I have it held onto the key mod handguard with an Odin Works flashlight mount. Now back from there, we're going to have a ambidextrous, if I can find it here without looking at it, ambidextrous magazine release, and then we have a, should be above that, let me look at it. This is going to be our bolt stop and bolt release. Now remember, on the opposite side above the magazine release and below the ejection port and dust cover is only a bolt release. You cannot use that in order to hold the bolt open. And of course, going back from there is the safety 90-degree throw, and on the would be your left side of the gun, or for the right-handed shooters, your thumb side. This is a little bit bigger, so you get a little bit better purchase with your thumb. And of course, on the opposite side, it's a little bit smaller, so it does not interfere your trigger. Now up here is a standard charging handle similar to what you're going to see on an AR-15 or the MCX series of rifles. This does have ears on both sides, so this as well is an ambidextrous feature of this pistol. Now this pistol, in comparison to the next one, size-wise, they're going to be very comparable. Both of them are going to have an 8-inch barrel. The MPX, of course, is the most expensive one, coming in at, the last prices I saw were almost $2,000 they wanted for one of these pistols, just stock without anything else on it. My Stribog here, with the arm brace, is roughly around $800. So you can completely kit this out and still be less money than what an MPX is going for. Now on this, I have a blast diffuser or a blast forwarding device, however you want to call it. I ultimately put this on here so my not my Surefire, but my Streamlight flashlight up here doesn't get completely like covered in soot or the hot gases that are going to come out of the muzzle here. It'll redirect that away from the flashlight bezel. Now, as I mentioned, I have a Streamlight flashlight followed up by the pressure pad up there on the top rail. Now, the original Stribog, the SP9 here, does come with flip-up front and rear sights, but I never used them. I installed Troy Industries flip-up front sights on this one. These are the micros, which were intended for the HK 416 and 716 family of weapons, since they have a higher rail. This actually works quite well in conjunction with the arm brace back here and how lower these rails sit. Now this is a, if I can get it to go back in, this is a factory Stribog adaptation of their stock that they have, which is the collapsible stock. They have a tail hook that came on this when I purchased it. I have M-lock slots on this, of course, come standard, and I put M-lock, not M-lock, Magpul, I should say, rails on both the 3 and 9 o'clock, and on the bottom has a rail system on it that would have came standard on the gun, a Picatinny rail. Now you can't really see, but in front here I have the a little bit of a barrel extension, or I should say handguard extension, that covers up a little bit more. And the reason I went with that is on the other side it has a QD slot up here, so I can use the QD slot on the back of the brace adapter here and up there in order to mount my Spectre Gear SMG sling. Now to go from front to back on this, as I said, I have my blast diffuser, a Picatinny rail on the M-lock, and then the charging handle here is by K&S. I originally had a HB Industries folding charging handle, but I had so many issues with that trying to run it, where it would actually cock up and down when you were trying to charge the handgun, and it would completely just block the gun up where you couldn't even use it. So I got rid of that and went over to a K&S Precision charging handle. I am still using the HB Industries, the little cradle block in there. That allows it to, when the gun is cycling, if I can do it, locked back here, you can actually lock the charging handle in the forward position. Now coming back, I have a slide release and magazine release. And then I have an ambidextrous safety, which is, of course, the same size on both sides. Now going back forward, I have the magazine release, and then this here is your bolt release. Now that is again on both sides. And then there's a push button up here. You don't need to push it down in order to grip and rip the stock out. It just automatically comes out. Huh. There she locked, and it locks in place. And then you just push it in. This has only one adjustment on it. Now if I SBR this, I can get the exact same rear end, and it's a stock system, but their stock is actually a 3 or 4 position stock that they make. So if I do go through the paperwork and SBR this, I will look at that for an option. But for right now, I'll probably just either run it with the arm brace or take that off completely and just run it as a standard pistol. Again, this is a little bit larger in the frame of a pistol. But compared to this Masterpiece Arms, this is a, I don't know if it's a Mac 30, it's a 9mm, but it's a MPA 30 SST is the model name of it. Masterpiece Arms now just calls them the Defender series, and then has it in basically a top cocker. This is a side cocker, but as you can see, this has got a 6-inch barrel. Again, this has got an 8-inch barrel, and this just has a little bit of a barrel extension on it. So the barrel actually comes out to right here and runs all the way back to where the bolt is back there. Now this is a quite a bit more compact package than what the Stribog or the MPX is. This is not really a whole lot to talk about. What I did back here is there is a thread hole back here for putting different accessories. So I found out that the shotgun front end sling mounts work good on there, and then I just took like a keychain ring put on that, so I've got like a nice little single point sling attachment system back here. Now the interesting thing here is the Masterpiece Arms upgraded the sights on all of their Mac clone handguns that are semi-auto, of course. So you have an adjustable front sight for your elevation, and then you have some adjustment in the back here for windage. There's a Picatinny rail mounted on it. I have a True Glow basic red dot. I think it was like a $99 red dot I just threw on there at the time just to have a red dot on it. Going over, this is the cocking handle on it. It, of course, is non-reciprocating, same as what the SP9 Stribog is. And pretty much from there, you have a small section of Picatinny up here to add any kind of like an accessory that might go on there. These guns were manufactured in this configuration with the steel frame probably about 7 to 10 years ago. Everything now has an aluminum frame on it. These have a really big grip on them in comparison to, like, say, a standard 9mm. I mean, you can see, get that magazine out, just in comparison how much larger that grip is, just because of the Sten gun magazines that the Masterpiece Arms and the original Mac 11, that's what they were, the Mac 11s took. So other than that, unscrew the barrel extension, and this is what you're looking at, which this is not a suppressor, it's just a solid chunk of aluminum that you can thread on to give it a little bit more length to protect your hand when shooting. Because in this configuration, there's really not enough to really keep your hands away from this barrel. Now this barrel, as I mentioned, you look from the front of this bolt all the way to the end, that's as long as the barrel is. I want to say it is in probably about a 5.5 to a 6-inch barrel. This is a 4-inch model here by Springfield Armory. Going on to it to give you a comparison as to how much slightly larger the Mac 11 series is over a 4-inch handgun. Kind of a little bit of a side-by-side comparison. So that will pretty much sum up everything here today for my my introduction or whatnot to the handguns I'm having out here today. Next up, I'm going to do some shooting at 50 yards with the Stribog, the MPX, and the Masterpiece arms. So I want to see how well they actually shoot at 50 yards against a human silhouette target. You're going to be looking at something that's not going to be fantastic accuracy. That's why I don't have any magnified optics on them. Other than that, that's going to be pretty much it for this. So stay tuned. We'll do a little bit more shooting. I am loaded up with a 124 grain 9mm NATO by Winchester. Going to shoot a milk jug at 10 yards and see what kind of an expansion we get with this full metal jacket out of a 4-inch Springfield Armory XD Mod 2, I should say. First. Well, that was pretty anticlimactic. Let's go on to the next round, reset, and see what that does. Next, I have an 85 grain 9mm by 1 Precision Shot OPS. These are a hollow point. We're going to see how this one performs. It's supposed to be something that is a rapid expansion, so it will not over-penetrate. Hopefully that will show up better when shooting the milk jug. Now that round did not hold the slide back. It did eject it, but it was not enough power out of that 80 grain projectile to cycle the action. That is something to think about if you're going to be using ammunition that is on the lower grain side in order to have any self-protection purposes with it. Okay, going to reset, and I want to see if going from a 4-inch barrel up to an 8-inch barrel will increase how much more energy is delivered onto that target. Next up, we have the 147 grain. Let me try that again. 124 grain 9mm NATO out of the SP9A1 Stribog. Now, what I have not mentioned is the Stribog, the XD Mod 2, and the Masterpiece arms are all blowback operated, which means it's the actual force of the cartridge firing which operates the action. I would say it would look like the round jammed. It did not load the next one, but going to reset and shoot this last round. Last round is that 1 Precision Shot, that OPS, and that 85 grain round. Well, she cycled, but I did not have the magazine in to see if it would lock back. It definitely had a lot more energy on transmission with as far as that milk jug flew. I can't wait to go look at the slow motion of all 4 of those and see what the result is.